Good afternoon. I'm here to give you an update on Hurricane Maria and our recovery efforts in Puerto Rico. As you may have heard, in the U.S. Virgin Islands, recovery is very much moving along. We even had some schools reopening very soon and are very pleased with the results. In terms of Puerto Rico, as you know, the devastation was nearly complete. Hurricane Maria was 1 mile away from being a Category 5 hurricane, the highest hurricane. The devastation is widespread. It is complete to the electrical system, the power, the homes, and the Commonwealth in general. We have completed most of the assessments, working on getting the ports open. We have 4 ports open currently and 8 airports open with limited capacity. That is absolutely critical, and what we were focusing on in the first days is making sure that we had the airports and the ports starting to clear so that we could get the continual amount of supplies into Puerto Rico. We do have supplies on island. We have the necessary food and water. We are bringing in additional for replenishment, in addition to heavy equipment and other things needed for the island's recovery. We have been working on yesterday, principally getting distribution, that last mile as they call it. To do that, we had to remove debris, we had to restore roads, we had to clear landslides across the island, and we have done things like airdrops in the meantime. So our focus was on the immediate relief and trying to gain access to the parts of the island. Currently, we are now looking towards continued replenishment. I did sign a Jones Act waiver this morning that came in yesterday afternoon from the governor of Puerto Rico. That is based on national security needs from the Secretary Mattis. The president encouraged us, as he has done throughout this hurricane response and the other 2 also, to lean forward. On day 1 of the first hurricane, he told us people first, and that has been our response. We want to get the word out to you. We want to make sure the American people know what's going on with their friends and family and fellow citizens. We appreciate your patience. You are seeing devastation in Puerto Rico. That is the fault of the hurricane. The relief effort is under control. It is proceeding very well, considering the devastation that took place. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Tom Bossert, who will add some thoughts.
Thank you, Secretary Duke. Hi, I'd like to amplify what the Secretary said, and of course, remind the American people that President Trump stands with Puerto Rico and the Puerto Rican people who are working so hard to get through this devastating hurricane recovery and relief effort. I'd also like to remind you kind of procedurally how we do it, and what we do here, and my job here on behalf of helping the President and on behalf of his team, is to help Elaine Duke and the people, men and women of FEMA, stand with the governor and stand with all the mayors and municipal governors and leaders in Puerto Rico. So Elaine Duke, you're doing a wonderful job. Brock Long is working tirelessly here to make sure that the entire U.S. government is bringing its firepower into Puerto Rico. And so I understand the coverage in some cases is giving the appearance that we're not moving fast enough. I think that there's kind of 2 responses I'd have to that. First, there's an understandable degree of devastation on the island, and for anybody that needs food and water, power, life-saving needs and commodities, health care, there's nothing that can happen fast enough. But what I will tell you is that we are mobilizing and marshaling the resources of the United States of America in a way that is absolutely professional, fast, and adequate to meet the needs. Now what we have to do is marshal those resources in a way that distributes them through the island. This is an insular island territory that stands some distance from the United States. The constraints and limitations are different from a contiguous state here in the United States. We can position hundreds of trucks in Florida or Texas for restoration of line services. We can't do that in Puerto Rico. We have to bring them in the moment the storm subsides. That is what we're doing. A lot of the reporting is understandably not wrong, but dated. For instance, I saw today that only 11 hospitals were assessed and opened. That was probably accurate, but just wrong at the time it was reported. We've assessed most of the hospitals at this point on the territory on the island. There are 69 hospitals total. 47 have been assessed by the Department of Defense and the Department of Health and Human Services. 44 of those hospitals are operational. This is important for a number of reasons. We were concerned with patients needing dialysis, 6,500 or so. Those are life-threatening conditions if they don't get that dialysis treatment. So again, it is not a matter of too fast or too slow. People are fixating on that. It's a matter of two different business models underway, a decentralized one and a centralized one. And let me get into explaining that very briefly, and then we'll take your questions. First, what we do is we send, yes ma'am. The request was for me to talk a little bit louder, so I'll see if I can direct over here as well. So two things at foot here. We need to centralize certain plans, and the restoration of power on the island is a centralized effort. What we call a direct federal assistance mission has been engaged, and now the United States Army Corps of Engineers under General Semonite is in charge of restoring power on the island of Puerto Rico. He has been in charge of that mission since early yesterday morning, and he has a prioritized and centralized plan for accomplishing that end. The plan starts with providing the diesel fuel necessary for emergency power generation. It proceeds in a second priority matter to the sustaining emergency power mission so that fuel gets to those generators and supports the hospitals and other critical needs. And then it moves into power generation restoration, then power transmission, and then power distribution. So that's how that system works. That prioritized plan has been laid out across the island, and the resources necessary are there. We've got 7,000, I'll make sure I read the numbers. We've got over 10,000 federal forces on the island, and let's see, 7,200 troops are there now, and over 10,000 federal employees total. So that's a combined ground force that's helping us distribute commodities. And then secondly, we've got an augmentation business plan here that is a little different and a little bit more proactive than what FEMA normally engages in. Instead of providing assistance to the governor, in this case what we're doing is providing assistance not only to the governor, who's doing a tremendous job, but also to the municipal leadership. I talked to the mayor of San Juan this morning, made sure I understood her concerns. She is absolutely hanging in there and doing a wonderful job for the people of San Juan. She understands now the business model that we're employing. She has a FEMA person standing with her that can help augment her staff capacity shortfalls, as she has had many victims of this storm on her staff as well. We're also augmenting the state. And so at this point, the federal government is there at every level, providing assistance, identifying needs, establishing requirements, helping the state validate those requirements, and meeting them from the federal perspective. And so that is a new business model. We put it in place, though, on Saturday. On Sunday, Saturday morning, we upped our planning assumptions by over 50%. On Sunday, we changed that business model. On Monday, the distribution system became a question of security and force presence. And so what we did is we put a force security presence model in place to provide security for each of the truck drivers so that they can provide water and diesel fuel to the people who need it without feeling unsafe. That has constituted a great deal of success for us, and we're going to keep that model in place. Lastly, the hospitals. The plan that was put in place over the weekend was to take all the hospitals that were down and to start moving critical patients to the hospitals that were up. That required a lot of rotary wing airlift support, and that was in place. The Department of Defense partners there were very supportive on that mission, the Coast Guard and Navy in particular. Those patients were identified and moved to the open hospitals, primarily in the Northeast. Now, as I reported earlier, those hospitals that are opening and reopening as assessed, 44 of them of the 69, are ready to take back patients. Those requiring additional critical care are being airlifted off of the island, and so definitive care is being provided at this point, and the remaining hospitals are being assessed right now. So as you see pictures, some of them are dated. As you see data, some of it is out of date. It's not necessarily wrong or right. The frustrations of people, though, are being amplified, so I encourage you to make sure you check the currency of the data that you report so that you don't provide any information that would unnecessarily defeat the morale of the people of Puerto Rico, because this is a mission about saving the people of Puerto Rico, relieving their pain and sustaining their lives. And they are absolutely showing every degree of compassion, composure, and leadership that we saw from the citizens of Texas and Florida before. It's inspiring. The people of Puerto Rico have every bit of support from President Trump that he gave to the citizens of every other state in this country. And I think that you're going to see that continue in a very positive way. I spoke this morning to Mayor de Blasio as well, made sure he understood what we're doing and how we've changed it. He was very appreciative of my update, but also of how we've changed our business model, and he's pledged to continue to help. We've got FEMA Region 2 providing support to Puerto Rico, and we've got FEMA headquarters marshaling all the resources of the rest of the federal government. Lastly, there's an effort here ongoing that's not just FEMA, and I want to make sure people understand it. There's volunteer efforts. There are people pushing commodities. Please bear with us as we sequence their entry into the islands so that we can prioritize those and take advantage of the limited ports, airports and seaports, for the best purpose and for the greater good. Now, I'm going to take some questions, but I'd like to first ask the Secretary to take questions. She is providing the leadership of this entire federal effort, and she deserves a great deal of credit.
Just one comment on what Tom just said about volunteers. The website for anyone that has goods that they want to deliver or services is nvoad, nvoad.org. nvoad.org. The governor has asked us to centralize requests for the amazing people that want to volunteer goods or services or money. That way, as Mr. Bossert said, we can prioritize and make sure the right things get there in time.
Secretary, this waiver to the Jones Act that you signed today, I know that it was requested by Governor Sullivan. Logistically, does it help you at all with capacity to get things into the island ever an issue?
It will help us with replenishment. It was not necessary initially in the first days. We had enough, but it will help with replenishment, yes.
And what are you doing in terms of getting the goods out of the ports into the areas of the country where they're desperately needed because the roads there are still...
Right. So we are using air support where we can't get through. We are cleaning the roads regularly. We have expanded greatly. Probably over 90% of the island now is accessible, limited. So that was what we've been working on over the weekend. Sir?
Yes, the question is, I spoke to a volunteer on my way in. They say they're still having trouble getting in the island, and according to the gentleman I spoke with, he believes we're within 48 to 72 hours away from an apocalyptic event. Can you speak to the problems of getting the volunteers in, and also in regards to the hospitals? I understand that the fear there is running out of diesel fuel, and he was speaking of people who are actually taking insulin that wasn't refrigerated, so there's a real health concern with those two issues.
First of all, not the volunteers. I know people really want to volunteer, and we are going to need volunteers in Puerto Rico as well as Florida and Texas for years to come. Right now, that will clog up the ports. We have the over 10,000 federal employees on site that are doing this. We want the volunteers to register so that we can get them in at the right time, but there are priorities. We have to get, for instance, AT&T in. They're rebuilding the cellular phone system. That is the priority right now. We have food and water. We have plenty of diesel fuel currently. So if volunteer organizations are not being allowed into the limited port and airspace, it's because what they are offering isn't a priority today. It will be in the near future.
Well, as far as the hospitals, he was saying he has boots on the ground, and they believe that they're within 48 to 72 hours of a very serious event.
Absolutely, and as we said, distribution from the island, the central ports, to the endpoints like the hospitals has been a challenge. Having 24 to 48 hours, we will have replenished. We have over 200 gas stations open now so that people with generators can do that. We have reached the hospitals, so that is replenishing now.
Secretary, two questions for you. Given that you're leading the federal response to the administration, and the administration is apparently asking evacuees to give their passports over as collateral for eventual reimbursement costs, why not waive that requirement for these folks trying to get out of non-struggle?
I am not aware of that requirement.
State Department discretionary policy put in place for these evacuees?
I am not aware of that requirement, so we will look into that. I'm not aware of that.
Second question, I spoke to the Administrator Long this morning, who pointed out that these folks, your folks, have all been working for 40 days. Harvey and Irma and then Maria now. Are you concerned about the fatigue factor for the federal folks trying to get help to people?
I mean, everybody is working hard, but this is such an important mission that people aren't going to give up, and they're going to put their personal comfort aside. What we are doing is we're replenishing the force, though. We have opened the surge force not to just other pieces of DHS, but to the entire federal government, and everybody's come forward with volunteers. So we're looking for replenishing people so that they can go home and replenish.
Are you satisfied so far with the federal response? Are you comfortable with what this government is doing?
I am very satisfied. I know it's a hard storm to recover from, but the amount of progress that's been made, and I really would appreciate any support that we get. I know it is really a good news story in terms of our ability to reach people and the limited number of deaths that have taken place in such a devastating hurricane.
Madam Secretary, what can you tell us about why the USS Bossert wasn't deployed earlier? There's been some criticism that hospital ships weren't made available to address the hospital issues you raised here. And can you tell us what's happening on the southern tip of the island where there's not much visibility into reality?
There was no need for the comfort early on. The determination was made by the governor that it was safer to keep the persons in local hospitals than to try to go through the arduous process of removing them to a hospital ship that couldn't come into the port because the port hadn't been assessed yet. It would have been a more danger to the passengers. In terms of the southern tip of the island, like I said, we have been working outwards. We have most of the island at least minimally accessible, and we have air surveillance of the entire island showing movement of people. So go to this last question.
This storm made landfall 8 days ago now. A lot of Americans are perhaps wondering why many people on this island still don't have access to potable water, don't have access to fuel to power the generators that they need. Do you feel, how do you respond to those concerns of many Americans? And secondly, do you think that the federal government did enough to pre-position assets on the island and also ships behind the storm to come in very quickly?
Right. I mean, my answer to that would be, like I said earlier, it was 1 mile away from being a Category 5 hurricane. Those are nearly 200-mile-per-hour winds, and the island was devastated. And so recovery is not going to be an overnight thing. It's going to take a long time. We have generators, everything's been prioritized. So we went hospitals first, now we're on gas stations. So it is a conscious effort to make sure we don't have loss of life. And we had goods in there. FEMA never left from the first Hurricane Irma that hit. But we have to be careful about the safety of those that are coming in to respond also, and make sure that we don't move them into the storm clears. Anything you'd like to add in closing?
So, thank you, Madam Secretary. So let me be clear. No, I'm not worried about people being tired. They're going to keep working, and they're going to keep working because the president expects it and because they've been trained to do it. I'm going to answer the second question, and we're going to thank you for your time here today. The second question is the plan to take people off the island, relief workers, put them onto ships, the Kearsarge and others, to ride out that storm and get back in as quick as possible, meant that we had more federal workforce on Puerto Rico for this storm than we did for any other storm in history. It's been an unprecedented storm. It's been an unprecedented response. The president and I have absolute 100% confidence in what Secretary Duke, Brock Long, and the men and women in Puerto Rico are doing. They're going to get through this. I understand your questions, but they're going to come out bigger, better, and stronger than ever. And when we rebuild it, it's going to be built to a better standard to withstand this in the future. It's going to be managed as better than ever. I understand you have a lot more questions. We're going to entertain them off air, but right now, the Secretary and I have to go back in, continue to manage this response, and thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it. Yeah, we expect the President of the United States will visit Puerto Rico very shortly, and we'll give you some details on this.
Still on Tuesday?
If the logistics permit, yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, Secretary. You said it was good news, and I'm confused by that, and I think that folks who are in Puerto Rico might be confused why this is good news. Can you explain what you meant?
Good news is because the governor, federal, and the people are all unified in recovering from this horrible earthquake.
But do you mean you don't mean it's good news for the people who are
It's
struggling?
good news that we have a unification of command where the governor, the federal response, and the people are all united towards saving lives and getting things to the people they need.
Yesterday, Brock Long said it was a gut